Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with Ardina Seward. John Sharan is still on away. We don't know when he's going to be off away and back here. But if he's listening, I hope he's doing okay and that his situation is improving by the hour. That would be good. Ardina, how are you?
Great. I went to a wonderful party this weekend, a wonderful fundraiser for the Norwood Warski Foundation, which is located in Yonkers. And let me tell you something. The Polish population knows how to party. Oh, my God. The dancing was just fantastic.
No horrors, though.
Oh, no, actually, they had a belly dancer there also. So besides doing the traditional Polish dances, the Polonaise dance, and Polish folk dances, they had this belly dancer who was Nora Eshams, who just rocked it. What a wonderful night.
Never heard of someone rocking that type of dancing before.
When you see those hips, believe me, she can rock it.
Good to know. This is a family show, Ardina. Behave yourself. So we have a guest on the phone today, don't we?
Yes. Alan.
We have a guy named Alan Chapell, who is a musician and a security expert. You don't normally find that mix, although there's somebody called Roger McNamee who has something called Moon Alice, where he's both in the tech world and the music world, and Mr. Chapell seems to be in the same vein. How are you today, Alan?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Peter.
You're very
nice
welcome.
To meet you both.
So you live in the city now, correct?
I do, yeah. I've lived in the West Village most of the last 20 years.
Oh, great.
But you're originally from actually north of New Rochelle.
I am. I grew up on the mean streets of Stamford, Connecticut.
What mean streets? I read that. I'm only kidding. It's really the mean streets of New York City, but
Portchester had mean streets.
Mean streets. I guess every city has mean streets.
And Mount Vernon, Yonkers has some mean streets. Peekskill has some mean streets. I don't know. Stamford's had some. Stamford about 40 years ago did this urban renewal, which they got rid of all of the poor sections in downtown Stamford and replaced them with office buildings and other kinds of buildings. But when you grew up there, downtown Stamford was a place to avoid, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had a number of friends who were shot there, and it was a little dangerous.
It was like Bridgeport, only south of Bridgeport. Stamford has a different kind of reputation now. So you were a musical prodigy. You could play 2 instruments by the age of 6, I read somewhere.
Yeah, my dad is still a bebop jazz sax player, and so growing up it was just sort of expected in my family that you learn to play not one but 2 different musical instruments. It was piano and then something else. And for me it was piano and the trumpet. And for better or worse of my 4 brothers, I'm really the only one who took to it. But I considered it a gift.
Your father made his living
that early.
Made his living as a musician, or no?
No. My dad made more spending money with as a musician and had a lot of fun as a musician, but didn't make much money as a musician. Ironically, the only ones who make any money in the music business these days are big tech companies and people who play in polka bands. I have a friend who plays in one, and boy, they make a lot of money.
I'll
tell you, some of the wedding bands in the New York metropolitan area make a ton of money too. My daughter's getting married, in a few days, and her wedding band costs around $10,000. It's a 10-piece band out of Long Island, but $10,000, and I could have gotten Broadway musicians. Remember, my best friend is the guitarist in the new Temptations show.
$10,000 is like half a car, half the cost of a new car.
He could have gotten musicians with brilliant musical backgrounds for 1/3 the price. But my spoiled daughter goes to a lot of weddings on Long Island because her fiance is older, 3 years older, and goes all these weddings on Long Island because that's where he's from. and they fell in love with this band that cost a bloody fortune. So it's not just polka bands. I mean, the wedding bands. But original music is not easy. I mean, we recently had Vanice Thomas, who's a well-known blues singer, sister of Carla Thomas and daughter of Rufus Thomas. And she scrapes by making a living, and she has a powerful instrument for her voice. And my friend Al Orlo is a well-known guitarist in the industry. And he makes a living, thankfully, but he's not swimming in it. But I will let him know we should start learning some polka. Maybe he should get in touch with you, and you can hook him up with some polka bands.
Yeah, the polka band that played at the Foundation Gala did all right.
You know how much they got?
I did not ask.
So you do not know?
They did all right. They did all right.
You mean they got more than just some goulash? Anyway, we're going to be going to break. When we come back, we want to talk about Alan Chapell's other job besides music. He is a security expert. So we're going to go on a Fox News break and Fox Business News break. And after that, we're going to come back with Alan Chapell and hear more about him right after this break.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Go.
We are back. This is Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Seward along with Peter Moses. John Sharan is out until further notice. And our guest today is Alan Chapell. So, Alan, we've talked about your musical career.
A little bit.
Let's talk about your tech career, because I know you've written a song that we're going to play later. I want to say sarcastically dedicated to Mr. Zuckerberg from Facebook. And apparently you have no great affection for Facebook and Facebook's privacy policy.
Or for the person who created Facebook.
Or for the person who created Facebook. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sure. So I've been working in the tech space because as a musician, sometimes you need to find other ways to pay the bills. And so I've built a practice advising tech companies on privacy issues. And so I've kind of had a pretty good firsthand seat watching the growth and development of Facebook over the years. And actually, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mr. Zuckerberg as the founder and chief innovator around Facebook and the creation of social media, and just how wonderfully dramatic a change it's been able to bring in all kinds of positive ways in the world. The challenge, I think, is that Mr. Zuckerberg has steadfastly refused to take basic steps that would protect its users, and it at just about every turn has done everything that it can to simply exploit them rather than protect them, and that's where I start taking issue.
Would that extend to the Russian bot ads? Is that included in your critique?
I think so. I mean, there's certainly a reasonable debate to be had regarding First Amendment and political speech, particularly in the United States, where such things are valued and protected. But I don't know that extends to doing nothing when you know that there are significant things underfoot, particularly given the gravity of the repercussions of those things. So when you talk about the Russian bots, there's a lot of damage that's been caused over the last several years that I think Mr. Zuckerberg and his colleagues could have easily prevented, but chose not to because they were too busy minting money.
But do you think that to play devil's advocate, do you think that is a weird defense of First Amendment rights in terms of Facebook?
Well, I think that they are often, as a platform, placed in the unenviable position about having to make quasi-editorial decisions about what ultimately ends up on their platform. And so oftentimes that does raise some First Amendment issues. That said, if you're able to demonstrate that the money you're receiving is coming from unsavory sources, at times bordering on organized crime, I think that becomes a bit of a problem, and then that's a different set of issues.
Okay, we are now in I want to say the middle, I don't know, maybe it's the beginning of this election cycle for 2020. And it's been said early on that we're going to see a repeat performance of what happened in the past election.
Except even bigger.
With the surge of fake news, fake ads, not fake everything, but just a lot of fake information. So how does the average Facebook user, since we're talking about Facebook, how does the average Facebook user decipher what's real and what is not real?
I think a good rule of thumb is you don't trust anything unless it's coming directly from somebody you know or trust.
And even that, you get.
Sorry?
But even that is not foolproof. There are all these catfishing expeditions going on Facebook, and there's a person who was an anchor on NBC, local NBC, Jane Hansen, who I thought sent me a message on LinkedIn, and I said, "Is it really you, Jane?" And she goes, "It's really me." And this was probably 10, 12 years ago. I was stupid enough to do something that I thought Jane Hansen had recommended, and I lost $2,800. And I've never said that on the air to anybody else. I mean, the only people who knew about it were my wife and me. So even when you think it's somebody you know, it may not be them.
Wow.
So even on one-to-one, you may not be dealing with the person you think you're dealing with. And how many times have we gotten messages, Ardina, from our friends in the media who have said, that wasn't me. Somebody, this happens all the time on Facebook. And not just on Facebook. I got screwed on LinkedIn. Anyway, go ahead with what you were saying, Alan.
Well, I think that's a real challenge, and I'll tell you, once a week I get a friend invite from my parents, and we're already friends on Facebook, but there seems to be somebody who thinks that they can make money by recreating those types of profiles, and whether that's for, I think what you fell victim to was sort of a bot phishing scam, or if they're just trying to create a group of concerned citizens around a particular political issue. There's a lot of room there for some pretty poor behavior.
Well, how safe is? I mean, I'm sure you're asked this a million times, but how safe is the internet? There have been stops and starts, but it would appear that the cybersecurity has grown by leaps and bounds. Would you agree with that, or do you think that we're still, that we're still prey to the bad guys?
Yeah, I think it's an arms race. So just as companies create better and better and tighter security and privacy protocols, the thieves and the evildoers of the world, they have money too, and so they come up with ways to thwart and to circumvent those processes. And so, I think that 100% safety and security is going to be an elusive goal. I do think it's better. It's sort of like New York City. 40 years ago there were a lot of streets that you couldn't go down, and now it's a lot safer. But that doesn't mean that it is entirely free of risk.
No, we've talked a lot about the technical aspect of your life. How do you switch gears? Because music is a creative process, and it's a right brain versus the left brain. So the music is coming up. Speaking of music, so just think about that question, because we're going to a break, and we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. And for the listeners, if you have a question, a tech question or a music question, you can call in to 914-636-0110. That's 914-636-0110. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, and our guest today is Alan Chapell. So call us, listen to us. The most important thing is stay with us.
With world and national news, here is the latest update from Fox News Radio. on 1460 WVOX.
Fox News, I'm Steve Rappaport. President Trump defending his decision to keep top Democrats in the dark about the raid to take out ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
They were talking about why didn't I give the information to Adam Schiff and his committee? And the answer is because I think Adam Schiff is the biggest leaker in Washington.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was also not given a heads up. Congressional leaders are typically notified beforehand.
Fox's John Decker. The president spoke before leaving the White House to address a law enforcement conference in Chicago. Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson boycotted the speech, citing personal values.
I want Eddie Johnson to change his values and change them fast.
Johnson responding a short time ago.
Getting caught up in negativity has just never been something that I do, and I'm certainly not going to do it now.
Johnson adding Chicago is willing to work with the president if he's truly ready to roll up his sleeves. America is listening to Fox News.
Between the junk you've accumulated and purged and the waste generated from everyday living, you need to rely on your trash removal service to get the job done. You deserve honesty. You expect reliability. You need CRP Sanitation. Since 1979, CRP Sanitation has been the trash removal company homeowners, business owners, and contractors have depended on for honest, reliable service. No dispatchers in different locations who don't know you, no answering services. CRP employees answer the phones, and they know their customers by name. Communication is a key to their success. Communication with you. Other companies offer the world and never deliver. CRP Sanitation offers exactly what you get. Honesty, dependability, professionalism. Doing some remodeling? CRP Sanitation can estimate the weight and needs of a dumpster. And that means not paying more than you need or having to add additional services at additional costs. Not all trash companies are created equal. Family owned. CRP Sanitation. Westchester's finest in sanitation. Call 592-4129. 592-4129.
Hi, this is Dr. Ronald Hoffman, your trusted partner in health and wellness for over 30 years. Catch my show Intelligent Medicine on WVOX every Saturday at 4 p.m. and Sunday at 5 a.m. for cutting-edge health information. Also check out drhoffman.com for updated vital health news throughout the week, as well as for access to the highest quality supplements and to find out how to become a patient. That's Intelligent Medicine with me, Dr. Ronald Hoffman, weekends on WVOX and anytime at drhoffman.com.
I'd like to invite you to tune in the third Wednesday of every month at 10 o'clock in the morning for Conversations with the Kensington. Hello, my name is Brenda Moynihan, and I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach at the Kensington Assisted Living in White Plains. Once a month, I will talk with guests covering topics that seniors and their families and caregivers want to discuss and learn about. We'll feature expert guest speakers, and we will look forward to taking calls from listeners. That's Conversations with the Kensington, the third Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m.
And now with your latest up-to-date forecast, here's Steve Pellettieri's Eye on Weather on 1460 WVOX.
Our weather forecast for this evening, calling for patchy drizzle and fog to develop as clouds thicken through the overnight. Nighttime lows down to 52, a little light rain from time to time as well. About the same, daytime Tuesday, look for occasional light rain, drizzle, and fog. Highs for the day, lower 60s, east winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. That chance of drizzle and rain likely at night down to 56. Wednesday, mostly cloudy, the possibility of drizzle, fog, and occasional light rain. Expected highs mid to upper 60s on Wednesday. I'm meteorologist Steve Pellettieri for 1460 WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station.
Take heart, White Plains and Central Westchester. Now that another local radio voice of many years has completely given up the local focus and abandoned any and all hometown programming, there is only one remaining local voice. Welcome to WVOX and WVOX.com. America's great community station, live and Westchester local, for you and yours. No cookie-cutter, piped-in, syndicated, one-size-fits-all corporate program. There's always something happening on WVOX and WVOX.com. Now, Westchester's only local station. We're glad to be of service to White Plains, Greenburgh, and Mount Vernon, too. It was only a matter of time.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. Our guest is Alan Chapell, and that was his latest song. It's Zuck. And Alan, forgive me because I don't have all the words. You can fill the audience in because in case somebody wants to buy it or somebody wants to listen to it on the internet. So what is the full title of that song?
Sure. The song is called I Am Zuck, and it's off of an album released in June called Penultimate.
Let's talk more.
And where can you find it?
Oh, you can find it on my website, chapellmusic.com, CHAPELL music.com. You can hear it on a bunch of radio stations. I think we're being played by about 200 radio stations right now.
That's great.
That's fantastic. So the song, as they say, the song got legs. The song has traction. Before the break, we were talking about tech versus artist. So I'd like to get more into your business, your tech business, and how you transition at the end of solving people's computer problems to being able to sit down and compose a song and work the other side of your brain. How does that work?
Yeah, there's something that's really refreshing about doing a whole bunch of left brain activities during the day, and then taking a deep breath, relaxing a bit, and start engaging in more right brain things like songwriting. And it's even better when I'm able to integrate my work life with my music life in a song, because I Am Zuck is really intended to be a faux confession from Mark Zuckerberg. So if he was going to look at the audience in the middle of the Mark Zuckerberg Broadway play and tell the audience exactly what he was intending to do with Facebook, it would be this song.
So speaking of that, do you see yourself in the future doing gigs or writing more for shows? Because it seems that based on the song that we just played, it's geared more towards theater than it is geared towards regular audience listening. Am I correct, or did I mischaracterize it?
No, I think it's a great question and a great point. I can see somebody making a show from my 6 or so albums. But it's interesting because I've always thought of a guy like David Byrne, who was best known as the singer for the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
And I've always thought of him as a rock star, but boy, I just saw him in his Broadway show just a week ago, and that's gone over very well there in that venue as well.
Now, that being said, do you get a lot of, do you play in a lot of clubs? And if somebody wanted to see you in action, where would they go? Where would they, what venue?
Oh, well, they'd go to my website and they'd see. But I play places like City Winery in New York and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. I play in New York City at Sony Hall. We played the Bergen Performing Arts Center. I'm hoping to play a couple different venues in Stamford and the Palace Theater and a couple of others sometime in early next year. So hopefully we will not be hard to find.
Yeah, and the way people can get to your website, it's This Is Chapell. Chapell has 2 L's at the end, CHAPELL.com. And there's a main page, there's some music, videos, bio, press, upcoming shows, gallery, contact, and e-press kit. So anything you want to know about Alan Chapell, for the most part, you can find on his website. You don't do any clubs in Westchester then in the near future or the recent past?
We haven't. The closest we've come has probably been Fairfield, although I recognize that's not super close. But we'll probably be in. We'll probably be at Garcia's sometime in early next year as well, and Garcia's is in Portchester.
Yeah, I worked at the Capitol Theater from the time I was 15 for several years.
Great! What a great venue.
It back then it was a rundown place, but they had great acts. I mean, I saw Yes in its first American concert. Lagas of Messina had their first public concert at the Capitol Theater. Janis Joplin wrote the song about Mercedes-Benz at the bar around the corner from the Capitol, whose name is escaping me right now, but but she wrote that there. And Jimi Hendrix played there. The Grateful Dead played there all the time. The Grateful Dead used to play there 5 or 6 nights in a row. And the Grateful Dead were the reason why the Capitol closed, because the Village Fathers in Portchester did not like all the deadheads sleeping on the ground at the train station, which is almost directly across the street from the Capitol Hill. The bar was called Vossens. And I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if you... I don't know how old you are, so I don't know how engaged you were back in the 60s with the singer-songwriter movement, but there was a singer named Eric Anderson, whose most famous song is called Thirsty Boots. It was recorded by Judy Collins and many, many other people. And he was opening for the Byrds. And his wife came over to me, and they were doing 2 shows at the Capitols back then, and said to me, your job between shows is to go with my husband to the bar and make sure he doesn't get drunk. And I looked at her and I said, I'm 16 years old. How am I going to... She goes, you're a big burly guy. You could stop him from getting drunk. So between the shows, we went to Vossens where he got me drunk. And then she comes back and he's completely drunk, and I'm even worse. I'm almost down on the ground, and she takes an oversized pocketbook, and she started beating me over the head with the pocketbook. My other great Capitol story, and I kept saying, I'm 16. The first concert I ever worked was New Riders of the Purple Sage and Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen opened for them. And when the show was over, they brought down the curtain, and they set up on the stage for a party. And this guy walks in, and I take a look at him, and I go over to him because I was, a reporter in training, I guess, right? Ardina, I can talk to anybody about anything, anytime, anywhere. And I said, excuse me, are you Abby Hoffman? And he looked at me, he goes, not tonight. And he ran to the side exit in backstage, and the guy who was managing the Capitol at the time, a guy named Eddie Claridge, comes over to me and said, what did you say to him? I said that, I asked him if he was Abby Hoffman. He goes, Peter, you're a kid. We're letting you stay here with the adults. Just enjoy yourself, get drunk. If you meet a woman and things work out, that's great, but don't start asking people questions, because I don't need guys like Abby Hoffman running out of here. This was something, I was happy he was here, and you ruined it. You wrecked it for me. I got a million more Capitol stories, but I hope you do play at Garcia's. And you should also take a look at Brother Vic's, the Heights at Brother Vic's, up in northern Westchester and South Salem, near the Connecticut border. You get there via the Hutch.
And Beacon.
Well, Beacon's much further north than that and west of that. But anyway, we have with us today Alan Chapell. And when we come back from our last break before the end of the show, we're going to talk to him about his security business because, most people in the music industry, unfortunately, have to find side gigs. And I don't think security is one that most of them get involved with. So I want to hear more about that when we come back. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. And we'll be back right after this commercial break.
WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Midnight at the Oasis, send your camel to bed.
Okay,
that's
Midnight at the Oasis from Maria Moldauer, which has absolutely nothing to do with our guest today.
But it's Alex Mintz and his music library.
And not just that, I shared a story about the Capitol, Maria Moldauer, and me at the break, and I had no idea. I probably read as a beat right now.
It's an inside joke, folks.
It's an inside joke.
We can't tell.
I got to know Maria Moldauer backstage. Let's just put it that way. Alan, Alan, the name of your new album is Penultimate, and you can get it via his website. This is Chapell.com. Chapell has 2 L's at the end. But besides the music, we want to talk about your security business. Can you describe what it is that you do?
Well, yeah. So I came back from living in India in 1995 and really had planned to give up music. Went to law school, studied human rights, and started a job at a tech company that was focusing on this new media thing.
Did you get your degree, or you just went to law school?
Oh, I got my degree.
Okay.
No, I'm a bar certified in New York.
Okay.
And but I studied primarily human rights and European Union law, and I was working in all these tech companies, and I was able to see that there was a huge issue that I don't think anybody was addressing, and this goes back in even 97, 98, where they started collecting a lot more data on consumers. And I knew that we were going to have to create some kind of a rule set regarding how that data can be utilized, who you can share it with, how long you can store it, et cetera, et cetera. And so really for the last 15 years, I've been working with tech companies as their chief privacy officer. And I explain to them what the rule set is and how they need to, make sure that they don't get on the wrong side of the Federal Trade Commission or the European Union, the commission over there. And so my role really is to represent the organization and make sure that their privacy policies are up to snuff, as it were.
And you're still doing that?
I am. It's a really enjoyable career.
And you work for one company, or you work for your own company, and you do work for many different companies?
I work for many different companies. I put out my shingle as a privacy attorney back in, I think, 2003.
And if you work for large companies, you're not allowed to say who you've done work for.
I work for a couple of Fortune 500 companies and some of the advertising agency holding companies, but my bread and butter has been, small, what they call venture capital funded tech companies. And I've also worked on behalf of the U.S. Trustee's Office in bankruptcies, because a lot of times in a bankruptcy, there's an issue around data getting transferred pursuant to the bankruptcy sale. So I was appointed as the privacy ombudsman for Chrysler and General Motors and Eddie Bauer and St. Vincent's Hospital and about 20 others over the last decade or so.
Have you been approached by governments, either ours or foreign?
No, I think the closest I would say is the U.S. Trustee's Office, which is a governmental office. And I've done some work within the European Commission on privacy standards. But I haven't ever been hired by a government.
Have you ever been requested to do work for a government?
A foreign entity?
No. No, that's never happened. I did one time testify in front of the Parliament in Canada, which I think was also about 10 years ago.
Speaking of government, as you are aware, in December, driver's licenses will be granted to undocumented persons. And there's some fear on the part of the undocumented community that ICE will have access to the information that they will supply to the DMV. There are other people that say, no, it's not going to happen. Just go and get your license and you'll be able to drive. So what are your feelings on that?
Well, I think if ICE gets access to the data when it's been promised that they wouldn't, then that seems like a clear-cut violation of applicable law and certainly privacy standards. Now, unfortunately, when a business breaches privacy law, there's usually a remedy, whether it's a class action suit or a fine from a government regulator. But when the government violates privacy, there's usually no remedy. And the closest you get to a remedy is a whistleblower type of a situation.
So there's no firewall between departments, you're saying, basically?
There may not be. Effectively, when the government says that they need information for national security purposes, in general, a government agency is able to obtain it. And that's probably always been true, but I think it's even more true now in a post-9/11 world.
And of course, if they have access to that access can be abused. And that access can also, if the government has it, be shared furtively with others who are not part of the government. I mean, the way our government is running right now, it seems to me that the Trump administration is sharing a lot of things with Russia that they aren't sharing with the rest of the United States. The Russians knew about the al-Baghdadi hit, if you want to call it that, and
before
Democrats
Congress did.
and the Democrats. Oh, some of the Republicans knew, but the Democrats didn't. And we're living in fractious times. And the reason I asked you about the government's local and foreign and domestic is that someone like you should be hired by whistleblowing groups or by government watchdog groups to try to figure out how to stop this from continuing or to learn what it is they have. And because it sounds to me like the technology has outstripped the law.
Yeah, I think that we are still dealing with the repercussions of a technology that in many instances has run amok. But I think that the guiding principle behind getting government to stop doing something is the will of the people and potentially the will of enough representatives in government. And right now, for better or worse, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of inertia yet.
Well, are there watchdog groups?
Yet? Wait a minute. There's not enough inertia yet? Why would you say that?
I would point to the lack of people taking to the streets because it's so important to them that they insist that the government stop.
But are there dedicated watchdog groups that really monitor these breaches of security by the government?
Oh, there are. There are some wonderful nonprofits like the ACLU, EPIC, the Center for Democracy and Technology, and there's a whole bunch of them. Those are more focused on privacy and civil liberties, but there are others who do great work. But in general, those groups tend to be a little underfunded and perhaps underrepresented in terms of the influence that they have within the government apparatus.
Has there been more government probing under the Trump administration? I mean, I know that's a hard question to answer because if you don't have access to the information, how are you going to know?
Yeah, I can't say if there was more or less under Obama versus Trump, versus Clinton versus Bush. But what's troubling about the Trump administration is the lack of transparency. Visitor logs in the White House, which is something that has been in existence, for decades, if not longer, those are gone. So we don't really know who's visiting the White House. There aren't press briefings on a daily basis. That's a huge issue because there's just not accountability on a day-to-day basis on the part of the administration.
We're going to have to conclude with that, Alan. Thanks for being a great guest.
I'm not going to be here next week, Ardina. Who's going to be here with you?
We're going to have Charles Stern as our co-host, and we're going to talk about politics.
And who is Charles Stern?
Charles Stern is the author and the CEO of Red Blue Talk.
So that's a radio show.
That is a radio show, and it's streamed live also on the internet. So we're also going to talk about the Mount Vernon Montefiore Hospital closing in Mount Vernon.
But we're going to have to say goodbye now.
Check us out next week.
I'll be back in 2 weeks, everybody. I'll be back on election night too. Have a great week.